Do you think it's about time the EU looked at rules for SMEs, small businesses? Because you keep hearing small business saying, actually, we're getting really wrapped up in all these EU directives that come in that are actually hindering us running our businesses. Do you think it's about time, under this present recession, that they actually lessen those rules?
The European Union has got to ask itself all the time, is this regulation necessary and justified? Is there some alternative that could be put in place? Secondly, if it is justified, is it as simple and straightforward as it could possibly be, or is it overly complicated and putting too great a business in the way in which it's being applied, as far as business is concerned? And thirdly, it's got to say, could really small companies, micro businesses, be exempt from this without damaging or undermining the effect of the regulation as a whole? Now, this is a question not just for the European Commission to ask itself, but as that legislation leaves the Commission and then goes into the European Parliament, they too have got to ask these questions. You know, is it necessary? Is there an alternative? Is it being designed in the best possible way? And can some micro businesses be exempt?
But is that happening?
It is happening, but not enough. I mean, there's a different mindset amongst the European institutions now. I saw it growing whilst I was serving in Brussels myself as Britain's Commissioner. For example, the aim to reduce the administrative burden flowing from Europe's regulation on businesses is a really important objective, difficult to see through, but absolutely vital. The questions that people have got to ask themselves, not only is this new regulation necessary and justified, but actually the other stuff we've got, what's already on the books, do we still need it? You know, should it be repealed? Is it now redundant? Sometimes you have a situation where all this is sort of accumulated.
But is that something that you in isolation can speed up in the United Kingdom?
No, what we can do in the United Kingdom with others is make sure that these questions that I'm asking and this mindset that I'm describing is reflected amongst other member states in the European Union and is reflected in the way people think, both in the European Commission and the Parliament. And we do that all the time. The other thing that we can do in Britain is to make sure that when we receive the European legislation here, we don't then sort of gold plate it and embroider it and sort of elaborate on it in an unjustified way, in the way in which we operationalise it in this country. Sometimes we're so sort of over fastidious, you know, almost over conscientious, that we make this legislation, this regulation, harder, more complicated than it need be, or as it were, or its state when we originally.
And that's something that I do hear quite a lot, that some countries just sign up to these regulations and then actually don't actually exert them on their industries quite as stringently as we do.
Yeah. I mean, there are two issues then. One is, are we, you know, elaborating and gold plating it and going further than we need to? But secondly, is there the enforcement to make sure that every member state which has signed up to this legislation is operating it at all? Now, the Commission is very vigilant. They are good policemen and women. And they can take steps to make sure that where member states are sort of ducking their responsibilities or trying to sort of find some exit, that exit is blocked, and they come back and implement what they need to do. But the key point I want to make, though, about this regulation is this, and it's why it's so important that all the member states are doing this properly, you know, in unison. It is because this regulation not only supports and makes the European single market work well and better, absolutely vital if we're going to increase trade, business opportunities, and the freer movement of goods, of capital and people in this single market. But it is also important because it replaces 27 different sets of national regulation. So if you're a business trying to, you know, increase your activity in this single market, do you want to be, and you're coming from Britain, do you want to be faced with 26 different separate frameworks of legislation in each of these different countries, or do you want one to understand, comply with, navigate your way through? And it is, of course, the latter that you want. But that regulatory framework that's put in place in the EU, replacing this sort of labyrinth, this sort of Byzantine network of multiple different national sets of regulation, does have to be got right. It has to be simple, it has to be comprehensible, and it has to be as easy as possible where they are affected for small and medium-sized enterprises to take on. And that's why we put through a Small Business Act in the EU to make sure that the impact on SMEs was as light and efficient and least costly as we could achieve it.